Alrighty, so today we are going to preview the first round of the Eastern Conference matchup. I'm doing this video right now because tomorrow we do have a first round matchup that is going to happen to pretty much kick off of these next couple of weeks. That is going to be a bit of a grind in terms of the playoffs. Obviously, whenever we get to the first round of the playoffs, there's going to be a lot of games that's going to be happening pretty much for the next couple of days. We're gonna have like an MLS game every single day until Wednesday, except for Saturday though. I have no idea why the league decided not to schedule games on Saturday this weekend. Usually they schedule a game that way, but apparently they schedule a bunch of games that happen on Sunday. But with that being said, let us begin by first talking about Inter Miami versus Nashville SC, and I want to mention this game first because this is the first game that will kick off round number one tomorrow. That will happen at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Inter Miami, of course, coming into this game as the third seed with a 19-8-7 record, whereas Nashville has a 16-6-12 record. And as I mentioned before, game one will be on October 24th, which is tomorrow at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. And then game number two will be happening the following Friday on November 1st. That is 7:30 p.m. Eastern, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. Or scratch that. It's actually going to be happening on Saturday in terms of that game. And then if it's necessary, game number three will happen on November 8th. Now, looking at the head-to-head matchup, Miami leads the head-to-head matchup 7-5-4. And when I look at the head-to-head matchup, I didn't realize the fact that Miami has kind of had their own edge over Nashville recently. Nashville has not beaten Miami in the last 9 times that both of these teams face off against each other, and that include last time in the decision day matchup where Miami won 5-2 in that game against Nashville, despite the fact that that game was really a game of two halves. Nashville was by far the better team in the first half. Miami just kind of not only took over the second half, but kind of steamrolled Nashville in the second half. Then it was a 2-1 Miami win over Nashville before Miami won 2-1 on the road against Nashville. Then it was a 3-1 Miami win over Nashville, and then another 3-1 win for Miami over Nashville. So Miami has won five in a row in terms of the head-to-head meeting. And as I said, going back to the last nine meeting, it's been either a Miami win or it's ended in a draw. Now, looking at the last five games for Miami, of course, they're fresh off of that decision day win against Nashville with a 5-2 result. Then they won 4-0 against Atlanta before winning 4-1 against New England. And this was prior to the fact that they kind of had a little bit of a mini blip where they lost 5-3 to Chicago at home before drawing 1-1 against Toronto's. But yeah, these last three games just kind of shows you that, yeah, this Miami team looks like they're ready for the playoffs. I mean, with the way that are just kind of dominating. And yes, I know two of those matchup are against teams that are weaker team, but the fact that in the last game, they show that not only they were able to hang in there against a Nashville team, and also partially that it was a Nashville team that had their issue in terms of finishing, but able to put up 4 goals in the second half and really run away with that one, just to shows you that, yeah, this team is going to not only ready for playoffs, but this is really kind of where the season began for Inter Miami. The regular season, it really doesn't matter for this team. This is where it will be the beginning to judge whether or not indeed is this going to be a successful season, or is it going to be a failure season. I mentioned already many times before, it feels like this playoffs will really determine this season, whether it's a success or not. They don't win MLS Cup, it's obviously going to be a failure. Now for Nashville, as I mentioned, they're fresh out of a 5-2 loss against Inter Miami. Then they drew 1-1 to Montreal before winning 3-1 against the Houston Dynamo. One of the game I didn't mention here is the U.S. Open Cup game where they were able to win 2-1 against Austin. That was sandwiched between both of these games, that is. But before that, it was a 3-2 loss that they had against Orlando before they win 3-1 against the Philadelphia Union at home. So yeah, again, their form heading into the playoffs, it's been okay. I mean, yes, there were a little bit of the hangover that they had in the U.S. Open Cup win in that game against Montreal, but overall, it's been okay. And that, this is a game that I've already mentioned. This is probably going to be the one that is the most fascinating first round matchup out of all of them. And yes, I know I'm kind of disrespecting the Hell is Real Derby that we'll talk about in just a bit, but this is a matchup between two teams that you could say easily this should have been a matchup in the conference final. These two teams easily can make the case that they can go all the way to MLS Cup and even winning it all. And unfortunately, it's just kind of one of those situations where one team's gonna have to win and one team's gonna have to swallow the bitter pill that they had a great season there, but unfortunately, they weren't able to get the best out of the other team. And in the case of Inter Miami, they better hope that they're not that team that will be eliminated, because, as I said, it will be an absolute failure to in the highest level, that 2 years in a row that they would get knocked out in the first round. It would be absolutely unacceptable whatsoever. And I guarantee you, even Don Gabber are praying that that is not going to be the case. Remember how I said in my bracket filling challenge, I won't be surprised we might see some favorable call that goes in favor of Inter Miami. I'm pretty sure he and Apple TV CEO and whoever is that is producing these playoff game out of Apple TV, they definitely do not want to see something like last year where Inter Miami flame out at the first round. Because think about the ratings, man. What's going to happen with the ratings if Inter Miami flamed out after the first round again? Now, moving on in terms of the next match. So, from a match that is probably highly anticipated, because it's between two teams that are right up there in terms of being an MLS Cup contender, to two teams that, they might not be there, but this is definitely probably the most even and kind of a toss-up matchup that I would say in terms of the playoffs. It's not surprising, seeing that it's a 4v5 seed, but this game, it's between Charlotte versus NYCFC. Charlotte have a 19-2-13 record, where NYCFC have a 17-5-12 record. Game number one will happen on October 28th, 6:45 p.m. Eastern, 3:45 p.m. Pacific. Game number two will happen on November 1st, 3:30 p.m. Eastern, 12:30 p.m. Pacific, and if it's necessary, game number three will happen on November 7th. Now, in terms of head-to-head matchup, 5-1-2 in favor of Charlotte. Last time both of these teams met each other, it was NYCFC winning 2-0 against Charlotte, and not only winning that game, that ended Charlotte 9-game winning streak. Because prior to that, Charlotte won 2-0 against NYCFC, which that was actually the match that started the 9-game winning streak for Charlotte FC. So it's kind of ironic, the fact that, Charlotte, their 9-game winning streak all started with NYCFC, and then it ended against NYCFC itself. But before that, it was a 2-1 win that NYCFC had against Charlotte FC. Before, it was a 1-0 Charlotte win against NYCFC, and then it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. And this, it seems like the home teams have been the more dominant side in getting the win, at least in the last four meeting. I mentioned before, I feel like this game could come down to home field advantage. Both of these teams are very good at home. On the road this season, that hasn't been the same case. I mean, both of these teams have been, I wouldn't say they've been super bad on the road, but they're definitely not as good as their home form it is this season. And that this is kind of the reason why, when I filled out the bracket, I picked Charlotte to get the job done, just because of the home field advantage. Now, looking at the last five games for Charlotte, they did win 2-0 against the Philadelphia Union, but before that they lost 1-0. Or they did win 1-0 against DC, but before that they lost 4-1 to Montreal, and then lose 2-0 against NYCFC. That was kind of the end of the 9-game winning streak. And then the game against Miami, where they were able to win 3-0. Not only that was probably the best result that this franchise has ever had, but that pretty much ties the record, at least close to breaking the record in terms of most consecutive win we have ever seen in the post shootout era. For NYCFC, they lost 2-1 to Seattle, losing 1-0 against the Philadelphia Union, which handed the Union their second Supporter Shield win. But before that, they did win the New York Derby 3-2 against the Red Bulls, before getting destroyed by Miami at home 4-0. And then, of course, they won 2-0 against Charlotte FC as well. So when it comes to form itself, I mean, both of these teams has had their struggle in this last five head-to-head matchup, but there's been some success as well. But either way, should be a very interesting matchup. Should be a very evenly matchup. One thing I will also say is that Charlotte is not going to have Wilfred Zaha in game number one, because of the red card. And if Charlotte does not win game number one, or if they don't win this series in general, you're gonna look back at that red card that Wilfred Zaha got in the last game against the Union. Just absolutely unnecessary for him to get a red card like that. And that, yeah, that could come back to bite Charlotte in a big way, because he is kind of the nucleus in terms of the attack, but he can also be a little bit of a head on the pitch, and we kind of saw that in the last game, and that could really cost this team, especially with the way that this matchup is very evenly matched. But that being said, now I'm going to switch the board and going to do it manually, because why not? do it manually by looking at the next two matchups. Starting off, and hopefully it doesn't get blurry on the camera. Let's see. Nope, it didn't go blurry. But yeah, the next matchup we're going to talk about is the Philadelphia Union versus the Chicago Fire. So this, of course, is a 1v8 seed. And last time when we saw a 1 seed play in against a playing round in the Eastern Conference, yeah, that was the biggest upset in MLS history between Inter Miami and Atlanta United. And I did pick in my bracket the fact that I feel like it could happen again, just mainly because yes, I know the Union won the Supporters Shield and it's been a great season under Bradley Carnell, but the problem is that they're facing against a Chicago Fire team that has a ton of momentum heading into this one. 15-8 and 11 is their record. Union 26 and 8 is the record. Game number 1 will happen on October 26th, 5:30 p.m. Eastern, 2:30 p.m. Pacific, and then game number 2 will happen on November 1st, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 3:30 p.m. Pacific, and game number 3, if it's necessary, will happen on November 8th. Now, in terms of head-to-head, the Union does have the better the head-to-head, 18, 9, and 10 in favor of Chicago. Last 5 head-to-head matchup, last time both of these teams faced against each other, yeah, Chicago don't want to remember what happened when they faced the Union last time. They got absolutely destroyed in that game. 4-0 was the result before the Union did win 1-0 against the Chicago Fire. So the Union has done the double against Chicago this regular season. But again, when you trying to do a double against your team and you meet each other in the first round of the playoffs, that might not necessarily be a good thing. Consider it's never easy to beat a team 3 times in a season, or in this case, the Union will have to do it 4 times this season if they want to move on. Then Chicago did win 4-3 against the Union, and then it was a pair of 2-2 draw rounds up the last 5 head-to-head matchup. Look at the last 5 games for the Union. They did lose 2-0 to Charlotte, but then they won 1-0 against NYCFC to win their supporter show, and then they absolutely destroyed DC because that's kind of the memo in terms of how things has been between the Union and DC United, winning 6-0 in that game. Then they won 1-0 against the New England Revolution, and then the prior game was pretty much the low light of their season, getting absolutely destroyed not only by the Vancouver Whitecaps, but 7-0 was the result. If you would have told me that the Philadelphia Union would win the Supporters Shield, but also have at the same season they would have the worst loss in franchise history, I mean that's just absolutely bonkers. But that's kind of how it is. I mean, the Union winning the Supporters Shield, but at the same time having the worst loss in franchise history against the Vancouver Whitecaps. For in the game, in the case of Chicago, Chicago, of course, they come off a 3-1 win against Orlando City in a game they absolutely dominated in that play-in round. Then it was a 2-2 draw between them and New England, another 2-2 draw that they had against Chicago. Then they won 5-3 against Inter Miami before winning 2-0 against the Columbus Crew. And during that stretch, let's see, 2, 7, 9, 11, 14. 14 goals that have scored by the Chicago Fire team. This attack is just on fire right now. Now, obviously, they are facing against the toughest defense in the league and a defense that is definitely going to be very tough to break down, and that's kind of something that Chicago will have to try to deal with. But I just, for whatever reason, I don't know. No, if this is just me want to see another Cinderella story like what I saw last year with Atlanta United and even the New York Red Bulls making it all the way to MLS Cup. But I just had that warm feeling that Chicago was going to do it. I feel like the curse that they've been suffering throughout the past, it's been completely vanquished. Many ways, I would say Chicago might even have a Seattle Mariners kind of run. I mean, for those that don't watch baseball, the Seattle Mariners, a team that, just like the Chicago Fire, a team that has been going through the pain of not making the playoffs for a very long time, and then when they do make it to the playoffs, things didn't go so well, and yeah, they only went all the way to the ALCS and was just 1 game short of going to the World Series as well. I feel like there's just something that tells me that that's going to be like the Chicago Fire, and something tells me that yeah, I know it's unprecedented that we see a Supporter Shield team or Supporter Shield winner get knocked out in the first round 2 years in a row, and even with the curse that is involved in Supporter Shield, that's kind of unthinkable to think about. But again, I just think not only the fact that I think Chicago definitely has the team to do so, and Greg Berhalter also has had the experience of able to lead teams deep into the playoffs as well. But again, I do have a little concern about the Union, the fact that as good as their defense is, their attack can be very hot and cold. This this season. And again, last year or last time when they won the supporter shield, that is, yeah, they basically bombed out after the first round. They were involved in the seed upset again. That was that was New England, and that team also went all the way to the Eastern Conference Final as well. So again, we'll see how this is going to be. We'll see whether this is going to be another major upset, and we'll see whether this is going to be another year where maybe the Eastern Conference is going to be like last year, where pretty much all the good teams in the first round completely bombed out because of the chaotic nature of the playoffs at times. And then last but not least is the Hell is Real Derby between Columbus versus Cincinnati. So this is probably the worst possible matchup for Cincinnati in the playoffs. I mean, I know they're trying to vanquish in terms of the pain that they suffer against the Columbus Crew, especially in big games like this. But I just feel like if they were going to do it, don't do it in the first round, especially against a Crew team that seems like they're getting healthier and started to get resort goals in their favor. And yeah, they're also a team that knows that yeah they've done this before against Cincinnati. They're about to break their interstate rival hard again in the playoffs. But Cincinnati with a 25-9 record, whereas Columbus 14-12-8. Game number one will happen on October 27th, 6:45 p.m. Eastern, 3:45 p.m. Pacific. Game number two will happen on November 2nd, 6:30 p.m. Eastern, 3:30 p.m. Pacific. And then if it's necessary, we will have game number three on November 8th. And I hope it's necessary because I would definitely enjoy watching a Hell is Real Derby 3 times in this playoffs. I mean, give me as many Hell is Real Derby as possible. This is definitely one of the biggest rivalry in MLS, and I think are probably just a step off of El Tráfico, that is, in terms of what is right now the biggest rivalry in MLS. Right now, but look at the last five head-to-head matchup. Last time both of these faced against each other, it was Columbus winning 4-2 against Cincinnati. It was a very entertaining game that was. Then it was a 1-1 draw between Columbus and Cincinnati, but don't let that scoreline fool you. The fact that was also a very entertaining game as well. Then it was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams. Then Cincinnati did win 2-1 against Columbus, but then uh, Columbus did win 3-2 against Cincinnati, and that was the game that was the Eastern Conference Final. So yeah, that was the game that again just kind of shows you what I think maybe Columbus has the advantage, because in these kind of big games like that, Columbus is able to prevail and Cincinnati aren't able to do so. Now, looking at the last five games for Cincinnati, they did win 3-0 against Montreal and then won 1-0 on the road against the Red Bulls. But then they drew 1-1 against Orlando City. They did win 3-2 against the Galaxy on the road before winning 2-1 against Nashville at home in a game where, that was a game where Nashville had multiple opportunity to win that one, but they pulled it out in the very end. For Columbus, they did win 3-1 against the New York Red Bulls, drew 1-1 against Orlando. Then they did lose 2-0 to Chicago, drew 1-1 against Toronto, and then they did lose 3-2 against NYCFC. But this is, of course, at the time when this team was injured to hell, and the fact that they're starting to get healthy bodies back right on time before the playoffs begin. Yeah, all of a sudden, Wilfred Nancy's squad might be a little scared again. Now, yes, there are definitely the question in terms of that number 9 spot, especially. This is where if they actually did not see Wasim Abu Ali did suffer a season-ending injury. This team, I would say, is not no ordinary 7C. This is a dangerous 7C team. This could be something similar to what we saw last year when a 7C made it to MLS Cup, and I wouldn't be surprised the slightly as if Columbus can do so. And in some way, I also wouldn't be as well, because you can never bet against Wilfred Nancy team, especially when the playoffs begin. But yeah, again, this is going to be a matchup that again for Cincinnati, just don't think this might be the best time to face your biggest rival, especially in the first round. I mean, to do it maybe in the later round, that would be fine, but to do it in the first round, especially with a lot of expectation again this season, this team, I think, along with Inter Miami, is probably right up there in terms of MLS Cup or bust situation, because of how good they been in the last couple of years. And also for Cincinnati, they definitely don't want to fall into the same problem the Union has, which is just never able to get over the hump. And the reason why I bring up the Union is because again, this team is pretty much like running like the Philadelphia Union with all the front office and coaching come from that team, and I didn't think it would literally translate into to this team as well. Where yeah, this will always be a good team at least in the regular season. Maybe can make a deep playoff run, but never able to get over the hump in the end and win the ultimate prize, which is MLS Cup. There you have it. That is pretty much it for my 20-minute preview of all four of these Western Conference game, or I'm sorry, Western Conference. Did I say Eastern Conference? That is. Tomorrow I'll look at the Western Conference. That is. I'll probably do it right before the Inter Miami versus Nashville SC game is going to happen. And again, I don't know why exactly the league decided to schedule these games on Sunday and not schedule any on Saturday. And there's also going to be some midweek game as well. But it is what it is. We just gotta have to stick with it. And in some way, I do like the fact that they are kind of spreading out some of the games, so I don't have like just a huge amount of games that's kind of overlapping each other as I'm keeping a track of these playoff games because these are kind of the time where I really don't want overlapping games to keep my attention in terms of these crucial playoff games. But either way, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure to leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.